Hello everyone, welcome back to the Vegan Proteins channel. My name is Ben, and today I'm going to be showing you what I eat in a day while traveling in contest preparation as a vegan bodybuilder. Alright, so it is just past 5:15. I have just rolled out of bed and woken up. When I am in preparation for a contest, as my body fat gets lower and lower, the time that you tend to wake up usually gets a little bit earlier and earlier because your body is basically just screaming at you to wake up and eat something. So I don't actually really mind it because it's summertime, the sun is rising earlier, the birds are chirping, so it's kind of nice to wake up with the sun. So today, for my first meal for breakfast, I'm going to be making baked oats and protein ice cream. First, what you're going to need is 80 grams of any kind of oats. Some people like old-fashioned. I just like the quick 1-minute oats because I find that it turns into kind of like that thick gel-like substance. Next, I'm going to be doing a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm using iodized salt, which I highly recommend to all my clients because if you are vegan, you're not eating seafood unless you are taking a supplement for iodine or you're eating a regular source of it such as seaweed, then you're not going to be getting it in your diet. So I recommend using a little bit of iodized salt to add to your food. Most of the sodium that we consume, if you look at the dietary guidelines, is in prepackaged goods, so it's totally fine, especially if you're active and you're sweating a lot, to consume some sodium, and it's actually important to make sure that you're getting your iodine in. So usually I'll add a little bit to certain meals, so I'm adding a 1/4 teaspoon here. Next thing I'm going to do is add the appropriate amount of water. So for a cup of oats, I usually like to go 1 to 1.5 for the ratio. So I'll do a cup of oats and then I'll do a 1.5 cups of water. So added our water and now it's going into the microwave for 3 minutes on high. All right, so it's going to be pretty thick when it comes out of the microwave. So what I'm going to do first is add my ingredients. So this is basically a way to make a low calorie or calorie friendly maple brown sugar oatmeal. So that's something that you'll see in stores is like the Quaker instant brown sugar and maple, and there is a reduced sugar version, but you can make it yourself at home really easily, and that way you can kind of tailor it to how much maple or brown sugar you want relative to the amount of oats that you have instead of just selling for whatever they have in the store. So this is McCormick maple extract. And what I've done is I've basically just taken a little dropper from another little bottle, and I'm just going to do 1 squeezer full, so it's not exactly super scientific. A couple dashes of cinnamon. Love cinnamon, put it in everything. And then what I'm using for the brown sugar replacement is, I think Truvia makes one as well that has stevia. So if you like stevia, that might be a good one for you. I like this Swerve one, which is made from erythritol. That's one of my preferred non-nutritive sweeteners just from a taste perspective. So I'm going to be using 2 teaspoons of this, which is 8 grams. And then what I'm going to do is use a fork to mix everything up so it doesn't clump. You want it to be quite thick because when it goes into the toaster oven to bake, you don't want it to have a ton of moisture because it won't get that kind of like crispiness on top that you would want from a baked oats. You could totally just eat it like this, but you'll see that it goes really nicely with the protein ice cream when you have a little bit of the crispiness on top of the oats after baking them for a little bit. So that is my preferred method of eating them. I'll taste test. Now I'm going to take a toaster oven safe kind of bowl plate combo and scrape it in here. Fun fact, I used to actually hate oatmeal when I was younger. I had a big thing with textures, so anything like mushy like banana, oatmeal, applesauce, did not like it at all. But you'll know that if you leave the bowl that just had your oatmeal in it sitting out for too long, it's literally like cement trying to clean it off. So the first thing I always do is throw it right into the sink and wash it off. So basically I'm just going to put it on the toast function of the microwave for about, I think, 8 or 9 minutes to get it nice and crispy on top. And then I will show you how I make the protein ice cream. Alright, so for the protein ice cream, I'm going to be using the Ninja Creamy. It is an ice cream maker machine that comes with these little pints, and you just fill up the pint with whatever you want. So I've seen some people will pour in like a can of fruit, and then they'll freeze it, and then they'll mix it up to get kind of like a sorbet sort of thing. So what I'm doing is I am using it to make protein ice cream. This is what it looks like after having been in the fridge overnight. Now this is a kind of lower calorie, macro friendly version, so you can literally make it as simple as just a scoop of protein and adding a little bit of water or almond milk or something like that. I'm kind of going for somewhere in between, but it will be a little bit on the icier side. Also, if you want it to fill up more of the pint, then it's going to require more liquid, which will make it icier. And if you want to make it creamier, you'll get less. So it's kind of about balancing those trade-offs. You can literally just buy one of these pre-made own protein shakes or any other protein shake brand, pour it in there, throw it in the freezer overnight, and then you've got protein ice cream ready to go. All right, so how do we actually make this wonderful creamy? I have this little creamy koozie, which I think is so funny. Shout out to my friend Maddie for putting me onto those, but it's kind of nice because it keeps it from melting, and it also keeps your hands from being freezing while you're eating it. So this is how I make my version of the creamy. Start out by measuring out a half cup of soy milk. It could be sweetened, unsweetened, up to you. I generally go for unsweetened, but the sweetened version is a little bit cheaper when I just get the brand name at Wegmans, which is where I shop. And then half a cup of unsweetened almond milk, so a cup of liquid in total. All right. And again, if you wanted to replace this whole thing that I'm going to show you, you could easily do that by just taking one of these pre-made shakes and using that and just pouring it in, chucking it in the freezer, and you're good to go. So the next ingredient is going to be some sort of protein powder. So I'm using this Whey Forward from MyProtein. So what this is it is lab grown whey. So animal free, no animal cruelty or suffering involved. Ethics is the primary reason that I'm vegan. So for me, I've never really had a problem digesting any kind of dairy protein. But you could easily use like a pea, a soy, a hemp, or rice, whatever kind of vegan protein that you enjoy. You'll do a scoop of that. And then you'll be doing 4 tablespoons. So for me, it's about 30 grams, might be like 32 grams, depending on the manufacturer, of powdered peanut butter. So it could be a PB Fit, a PB2. This is actually peanut flour that I buy in bulk in like 25 pounds from nuts.com. And then I just refill it in this little thing. The only difference is that it doesn't have the added sugar or salt to it, which is totally fine. And I think it's actually better taste-wise. And it doesn't really change the calories that much because it's a small amount if you're just using this. But mixing it in recipes and stuff, you don't really need it, so I don't notice a huge difference. And the last thing that you'll need is instant sugar-free, fat-free pudding mix. So just one of those kind of accidentally vegan things. There's this Royal brand banana cream. It's just the cheapest one that I could find, and it works fine with the flavors. So I'm using a chocolate brownie protein. My favorite protein to use for this is a salted caramel protein by the same manufacturer, and then peanut and banana. So it's kind of like a chocolate peanut butter banana thing going on, or it would be like a salted caramel peanut butter banana thing. So you just use 7 grams, which I think is about a tablespoon of the instant pudding mix. There's also Jello makes a bunch of different ones. So they have like a white chocolate one, a chocolate. They have a lot of interesting flavors. Like they have a pistachio, a lemon, a cheesecake. So there's lots of different ones that you could try out. Lots of different flavor combos, different proteins, different sugar-free pudding mixes, lots to experiment with and make it customizable to you. And it's pretty macro friendly as well, which is the nice part. So it's better than, in my opinion, just drinking a protein shake and shaking it up. Sure, there's a little bit more calories coming from the instant pudding mix, and maybe if you want to use like the powdered peanut butter, but in my opinion, it's worth it. So I have all the ingredients mixed up, ready to go, and then I'll take the wand, put it in there, and start spinning it. And then I'm slowly adding the ingredients in while I'm spinning it so that it doesn't clump, because if you kind of get the clumps, it's kind of hard to get out. Even if you're using the wand a lot, once it's clumped, it kind of stays clumped. So I like to slowly kind of like whisk it in, and then it'll be pretty frothy by the end. And then I'll add water up to the fill line, put the lid back on, throw it in the freezer, and it usually needs about 8 to 10 hours at least to harden up. Otherwise it'll just be too kind of soft or wet when you after you spin it. But I just ate this at 6 o'clock, and I'll be having it again probably at like 2. So it doesn't need to absolutely be in there for the maximum amount of time, but it does make it a better finished end product. So first we're gonna measure out the 30 grams of peanut flour, and you can see I'm putting it in this little container here. 7 grams of our pudding mix. So I've got that ready to go in my little container here. So I like to measure out my protein, even though it comes with a scoop, because depending on how big you scoop it or how small you scoop it, it can drastically vary. So we're going for 25 grams, 26, that's good enough. You gotta get all your things staged, because once you start, you gotta keep going. So I'm gonna get my wand, I got my scoop of protein here, I'm gonna put the wand in the milk. Protein goes in, perfect, that looks pretty incorporated. And now I'll slowly start adding this in. Make sure all the clumps are out before I add in the next bit. And it's pretty thick if you just use a cup of plant milk plus all those ingredients that I showed you, because that was quite, what, it's like 60 grams total of ingredients. So right here, and I'll just add some water to that. Throw the lid on, put it in the freezer. See, the other one I've got on deck for later. And then the first time it comes out, depending on how you prepared it, this is like the little container that holds it. It may look a little powdery on top, so you can see that it's still frozen on the sides here. So what I'll do is I'll take a spoon, I'll scrape down the sides to get the icy bits off, and then I'll try to scrape the bottom, run it through again. So the first time I used the light ice cream setting, this time I'm going to be using the respin setting, and then if I need to do it again, I'll use the respin setting again. All right, so here we have the finished product. I'm just sitting out here on my back deck enjoying the lovely day. The sun is rising behind me. I've got a nice good breakfast before the gym, so I'm excited, I'm ready to go. So we have the oats, we have the protein ice cream, and like I said, I kind of like to combine them. It's almost like a warm pie in ice cream, at least for the cinnamon version. I'll make a chocolate version at night and have that with the ice cream, so it's kind of like a hot fudge sundae sort of thing. I don't know what I'm saying. You get this way as a bodybuilder and you're deep in prep, you just start thinking that everything tastes better than it is. All told in this meal, it has about 50 grams of protein. I think it's about 600 calories. So the creamy, the way that I make it, is around 300 calories, and it's got, I think, close to 40 grams of protein. And then the oats are around 300 calories with 10 grams of protein. So the oats it's basically just the same nutrition as regular oats. There's not much nutritional additions from the cinnamon, the maple extract, and the Swerve brown sugar substitute. So it's pretty much just 1 cup of oats dry, and then the creamy there as well. So I generally eat around 4 meals per day on prep. I have the creamy 4 times a day, and then whatever I'm having with the creamy is going to depend on kind of the phase of the day. So if it's pre-workout, I'll have some oats. If it's before bed, I'll have some oats, because I train right after my first meal, so I like to have a little bit more food in my last meal before I go to bed, because this won't have fully digested by the time that I go to do my workout. And then my second and third meals in the middle of the day tend to be a little bit smaller. So the second meal, I'll usually just have a vegetable soup alongside that, which I'll show you later. And then the third one will typically just be the creamy. And so a typical day of eating for me right now is about 2,000 calories. I think it's around, I want to say anywhere between 180 and 200 grams of protein. Today is going to be a little bit different since I'm traveling, so I'll show you later what I'm bringing with me and how I generally like to approach travel. But for now, I'm going to dig into this meal and we'll go from there. Alright, so I am back from my walk, and now I'm going to show you what I'm going to be bringing with the gym to me. bringing with the gym to me, bringing to the gym with me. Prep brain. So we are now going to be looking at this pre-workout, which is the Euphoria pre-workout. Nothing special about this necessarily, but more so pre-workout is kind of a ritual that I like to have before I go to the gym. There are different rituals some people like to have, whether that's putting on a cool outfit, that is drinking their pre-workout or their coffee. On my rest days, I will have a espresso or two as kind of my caffeine intake, just so I don't get that kind of like headache thing, and it's also kind of nice to sip on while I'm doing some work in the morning. But I save my pre-workout for my gym days, and that's kind of my caffeine. So typically I'm having around 200 milligrams a day. I'm working out first thing in the morning, so I find that it doesn't really impact my sleep. Generally, I try to say keep caffeine away from bedtime as far as possible, based on the constraints of your lifestyle and the pros and cons of caffeine and how much you find it helps to affect your workouts in a positive manner. So I'm going to be doing a scoop of this, which is 14 grams, kind of similar to what I was saying with, what was it? Protein powder. You probably want to weigh it because a scoop really packed in versus a scoop that's kind of lightly packed can be very different. So I might think this is a scoop. Okay, I'm actually, I guess, pretty good at it because this ended up being 14 grams, which is the serving size. But you get kind of the point that I'm trying to make. It's better to kind of just keep things standardized. Obviously, if you're traveling or something, you don't want to bring your food scale. That's totally not going to make a big difference. But if you're at home and it's easy enough, it also kind of just helps make sure that you're getting the same dosage and the same effect every single time. So I will shake this up, put it in the fridge to kind of cool off, so I have that ready to go, and I'll sip on that on the way to the gym in the car. Typically I don't fill the little shaker bottle up all the way, and then I will finish filling it up here. Okay, now we're going to be making an intra workout. So this is what I sip on during my workouts. And I find that if you have longer workouts, like if you're doing a 30 to 45 minute workout, 60 minutes even, you probably don't need this. But for anything over 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours, definitely something to consider. And generally what I will look for in an intra-workout drink is electrolytes. So sodium, potassium, maybe even some magnesium. And then some form of carbohydrate. So for me, Gatorade powder, it's super cheap. It's rapidly absorbed because it has dextrose in it. You could buy like maltodextrin powder, and then some sort of amino acid or protein. So you could mix just an unflavored protein, like a fruity flavored protein in there. Generally you want like a 4-to-1 carbohydrate to protein or 2-to-1 carbohydrate to protein, somewhere in that range. When I'm cutting, I will have less calories available for my intra workout, but I still try to keep a little bit. And oftentimes I'll hear clients or other people say, well, then that's less calories for, you know, fibrous filling fruits and vegetables, things that help with hunger during a cut. And yes, while that's true, an intra workout can be really key in terms of maintaining your training performance when you are dieting, which is the thing that is going to help you maintain your muscle and ultimately get the physique that you're after. So literally I do one serving of this, which is 80 calories of carbs, and then maybe I think like 20 calories of protein. So the whole thing ends up being a little bit over 100 calories, but that's definitely worth it out of my calorie budget in order to get that benefit. And I do feel like it kind of helps maintain my energy levels throughout my workout. You'd be surprised. So just give it a try if you haven't before. So what is going in here? The first thing is going to be a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now the Gatorade does have electrolytes added to it already, but because this is a lot of fluid, you can see how much liquid I'm going to be consuming throughout the course of my workout. It's going to need to add some additional electrolytes in there to balance that out. So I've got the salt. Then this is potassium salt called new salt. So again, it's like basically what you would find in some sort of electrolyte beverage, but it's way cheaper to make it yourself. So I do another 1/4 teaspoon of that. So 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/4 teaspoon potassium chloride, potassium salt. And then to add a little additional flavoring, because I found that just with one serving of the Gatorade, like if I was doing 2 or 3 servings, first of all, I wouldn't need to add these, but with just one serving of that plus these, it's a little too salty for my taste. So Danny actually gave me these. These are lemon crystals. So it's basically, I think, lemon juice that they dehydrate and turn into crystals. So I do 2 1/4 teaspoons, so a 1/2 teaspoon in total of that. Again, very minimal calories, but it adds a nice kind of tang that balances out the saltiness. Okay. And then I will do 5 grams or a scoop of creatine monohydrate, basically the most studied and scientifically supported sports supplement, maybe arguably the only one for building muscle. So 3 to 5 grams of that a day. I just do 5 grams. Could potentially also have some benefits for cognition, and especially as vegans, when we're not getting it kind of through naturally occurring sources in our diet, then it makes sense to supplement with it. Now you can basically do it any time of the day, you just need to be consistent with it. And then we're gonna do Gatorade powder. So for me, that's gonna be 23 grams, which is 1 serving. And that has, it's basically pure carbohydrates. So it has 22 grams of carbohydrates per serving alongside those electrolytes. So I'm just gonna measure out 23 grams there. And then, as I mentioned, the ratio of the amino acids to carbohydrates. Now, why do you want the protein or the amino acids in this drink? So part of the reason is that, well, actually, I've heard different rationales for it, and they're completely opposite rationales. I've heard some people say that because protein kind of takes a longer time to digest, then it's going to help sustain or like slow down the absorption of the carbohydrates into your system and not give you such a massive spike during your workout. But that doesn't really make sense to me, and the way that it was initially explained to me was that it actually helps increase the rate at which the carbohydrates are absorbed, because ideally you want them to be getting to you as soon as possible if you're drinking them during your workout. And protein has an effect where it, alongside of carbohydrates, helps raise your insulin levels, which is not a bad thing. First of all, don't get me started on that rant. If you're a healthy individual, even if you're not, we're not going to go there. But it helps, basically, protein helps increase the rate at which carbohydrates are absorbed because of these changes, acute changes in insulin. So that's one reason that I've heard it kind of said that it helps to have that during your workout. So this is just a bulk essential amino acid. And why EAAs instead of BCAAs? So EAAs is kind of more of a wide, broad spectrum. BCAAs has some of the ones that, like leucine, that have been purported for helping to grow muscle, but in reality you need all the essential amino acids. So I would always recommend EAAs over BCAAs, and they're not flavored, it's just super plain. So that is my intro. I'll probably add some ice to that, and then I will take you alongside with me to the gym. See you there. Alright, so I'm sat here on my back patio. I just got back from the gym, about to enjoy meal 2. So I don't really speak in terms of like breakfast, lunch, dinner. I just speak in bodybuilding speak, which is meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4, and so on. So I've got the creamy here, same thing exactly again. And then what I have here is a kind of spinach and broccoli soup. So super basic. Basically, I just microwaved some frozen broccoli and some frozen spinach. I think like 4 ounces of frozen broccoli and 2 ounces of frozen spinach, and then pureed it with a stick blender and some vegetable stock. And the reason that I have this is that it allows me to cover my micronutrient needs. So I use an app called Chronometer to track my micronutrient intake, and what that allows me to do is make sure that I'm covering all my bases in terms of making sure that I'm not deficient in anything over the short term, because as you'll see, my diet is very basic when I am prepping. So I have creamy 4 times a day. So first I think about, okay, where am I going to get my protein from? That's how I build the base of my diet and my meal, and I know kind of my calorie and protein targets based on my goals. And then from there, the way that I build it out is, okay, what's the calorie bank that I have left for carbohydrates and fats mainly? So what I'll first start doing is, okay, let me cover my micronutrient needs, which this little soup, believe it or not, plus the creamies and the oats covers everything. So make sure I get a couple servings of vegetables. Now, I'm not going to say that this is ideal, like you want to be getting more fruits and vegetables than what I'm doing over the long term, but it's for a short-term goal and outcome, and I would rather kind of just get all my micronutrients in one little thing and then have the rest of the day be a little bit more flexible in terms of food sources, like keep things very basic, just oats, my protein ice cream, and this soup. Basically all baby, I'm on like a baby food diet because there's no solid food, it's all liquid. So if I lose my teeth, I can still get shredded. That's a good thing. And I honestly think that keeping things pretty basic and simple day to day is very underrated. One of the struggles that I see most with clients is trying to mix things up and vary things too much day to day. Now, some people do need more variety than others, but I find that once you really tune into what you like and you find recipes and foods that fit within the context of your goals, most people are fine kind of just swapping in a couple, having a couple different breakfast options, lunch options, dinner options, snack options, and then, letting it kind of vary day to day a little bit, but mostly keeping the structure of when you're eating, what you're eating pretty similar. And then, if you're traveling or you go out or you need to be flexible, that's where if it fits your macros or flexible dieting comes in, but you're not winging it or trying to figure things out on the fly for every meal, because then it leads to more stress than is necessary. You can kind of just go on autopilot with this, and then you have that tool in your back pocket of, okay, let me swap this carb source for that carb source, or this protein for that protein. You have that skill set when you need to, but you're not relying on it for every single meal, because that takes a lot of cognitive space. So that's kind of how I set up my diet, and that's what I recommend that clients do as well, more or less. So I'm going to get into this meal, finish it, enjoy the nice day outside. Then I will take you inside and I'll show you what I'm bringing with me while I am traveling to Dallas today, and we'll go from there. One thing that I forgot to mention earlier is the supplements that I am taking. So I take a B12 supplement mega dose once per week, and then I take a vitamin D supplement in the winter months since I live in New England. And honestly, I still take it every other day just because it's a larger dose, even during the summer months, because when I got tested a year or two ago, I was on the lower end and now I'm on the higher end. So that's great. And then I also take a vegan omega-3, so an algae oil supplement, and that's these. One thing about vitamin D is you want to make sure that you take it with a fat source. Same with vitamins A, E, and K. If you're supplementing with those, you want to make sure that you are consuming them with a fat source, because they are fat soluble vitamins, whereas vitamin B12 and the rest of them are water soluble. All right, so let's discuss what I'm going to be bringing with me for this day of travel. My flight is at 4:15, so it is currently 11 o'clock. I just ate my second meal. Typically I have 4 meals in a day, but today it just makes sense with the fact that I'm going to be staying out later. So I'm flying out to Dallas to look at some properties, potentially being a first-time home buyer. So I'm viewing a property pretty late tonight at like 8:45, 9, which is typically when I go to bed. So I know by the time I finish that, go to the hotel, get checked in, I'm probably going to want to have another meal before I go to bed. So I'm having 5 slightly smaller meals instead of 4 of my normal meals. What I'm doing is, because I am not having, I would typically have 4 of those protein ice creams, as I kind of mentioned, and then my last meal, my first meal, are pretty much identical, so the protein ice cream and the oats. What I'm doing instead is my next meal is going to be probably around 1:30, 2 o'clock. On the way to the airport, I'll have the last creamy of the day, the last protein ice cream. So that'll be number 3. And that'll just be the meal by itself. So that's my typical meal 3. So meals 1, 2, and 3 will pretty much be identical. And then instead of having meal 4 be the oats and the creamy, what I'm gonna instead do is on the plain, kind of in between when I go to bed and that meal at like 1:30, 2 o'clock, because I'm gonna probably go to bed at like 10 or something like that. And that would be a long time to wait in between 2 meals. I'm going to have one of these Nugo Slim protein bars. I'm gonna have one of these Primal Spirit vegan jerkies. Both of these products I mentioned in my 5 favorite snacks when dieting video. So if you haven't seen that, Christina will probably put the link up in the corner there, so you can go check that out. But I'll be having those and then some cucumber slices as well, probably like half a cucumber cut up. And that'll come out to roughly, let's see, 180 calories from this, 75 from this, so 255. Probably around 275 calories and about, let's see, 16 from this, 25 grams of protein, give or take, which is a pretty good ratio. So if you can get, I always say, like, if you can get for every 10 calories, 1 gram of protein. So if 100 calories, 10 grams of protein, 200 calories, 20 grams of protein, that's a pretty good ratio for most of the time for like a snack. And then when I get to the hotel tonight, I paid like $7 extra to get access to a microwave and a fridge. So what I'll do is I have these instant oatmeal made with whole grain oats, quinoa, and amaranth with flax seeds and chia seeds unsweetened from Trader Joe's. So in each of these, I believe it's 160 calories. So it's basically like a half cup of oatmeal, typical serving. So what I'll do is I'll have 2 of these plus a travel sachet of protein. It's another brand of the animal-free, the lab-grown whey protein, which I haven't actually tried yet. So, and I don't think they make them anymore. I think it's only my protein now. So I have a cookies and cream flavor and a chocolate fudge brownie flavor. So tonight when I get to my hotel, I'll have 2 of these packets and 1 of these. So that'll come out to be 420 calories and probably around 30 grams of protein. And my typical last meal has 600. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit more over, 275 plus 420 is roughly 700 calories instead of 600. But again, you got to focus on what is the long-term picture. Is 100 calories going to make or break it? No. But if I was to be super hungry, get to my hotel, and then I order food and I eat like, 800 calories, that is actually going to impact the results. So something that I usually say to clients is don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I think that's the saying. And it's really true. Like, every day is going to look a little bit different. Do the best to maximize your potential in the context of whatever the situation is. Like, we like to focus on what's optimal, but optimal changes based on your context. So that's a really important thing to note. I'll also go over what I'm just going to have tomorrow while I'm there. So 1 viewing tonight, go to sleep, get up tomorrow, a couple more viewings, and then catch a flight back home. So quick turnaround, but I'm going to be out and about basically the whole day. So I'm going to keep things pretty simple. I'm bringing this little plastic bowl, by the way, to heat up stuff in the microwave at the hotel. And then I've got a plastic fork and spoon. So another thing to note is all of this stuff can go through security. So if you're flying, you don't want to take like a protein shake that, it's already pre-made that has water in it. It would be nice, but they're not going to let you through that, let you through security with that. So you got to just work around it, do what you can. Tomorrow, breakfast will be the same meal that I had at night. So 2 packets of the instant oatmeal and the protein sachet. So that'll be the first meal. And then for my other, 3 meals while I'm traveling and still away, keeping it very simple again, I'll just be having one of these Lenny and Larry's cookie-fied bars, which are new. They have 24 grams of protein and 320 calories. So basically, I'm just thinking about where am I going to get my protein in like a convenient way. It's also important to note, like, the Nugo Slim bars probably wouldn't be the best because I'm going to Texas and it's going to be 90-something degrees. Whereas these, they have some chocolate in them, but it's mostly kind of like the binding agent is, or like the coating is kind of like fiber almost. So I'm not as worried about these melting. They'll get really soft. You know how protein bars have that kind of like chewy texture a lot of the times? It's one of those. So it's not going to melt. It'll just get really soft. And then I'll have also another one of the jerkies with each meal. So these will be 34 grams of protein and around 400 calories, which is pretty good. And then I'll probably bring a couple pieces of fruit to have with them, maybe like a small plum or a clementine or something like that, just because I like to have some fruit or vegetable with a meal, ideally. Also, like sometimes these protein bars or like the jerky, like afterwards I have like the salty taste or like the sweet taste kind of left over, and I like a fruit or vegetable to kind of like cleanse my palate. Let me know if that's weird. So that'll bring me to most of my nutrition for tomorrow. I'll just be running this meal on repeat 3 times while I'm away, and then I get back to Boston at like 8 or 9 p.m. and then I'll probably come home and just have a protein ice cream by itself to finish off the day. So that is my plan for traveling. I'm mostly packed already, so I'm just gonna get some steps in because it's not gonna be a huge steps day. Most of the day I'll probably be at the airport and on the plane. So I'm gonna get some steps in, come back, take a shower, finish up any packing, and then get back to clients. Work has been amazing lately. I really love all the individuals that I'm working with. Met a woman yesterday or the other day who said that this is the best that she's felt in like 7 years since her pregnancies, and hearing stuff like that just makes me feel so fulfilled and makes me feel even more fired up about the work that I'm doing, the people that I'm working with. Just have a couple more clients coming on board right now that I'm really excited to get started with. There's just a lot of exciting things happening, and if you are looking for coaching, I do have roster spots available, so reach out to coach@VeganProteins. One of us will get back to you pretty much instantly, and we can set that up and go from there. So I will see you guys probably in the car eating a creamy. Alright, it is currently 10:15. We finally made it to the hotel. The flight situation was kind of crazy, so there was this massive storm right before we left. So my sister went to drive me to the airport, and there were power lines down, trees down. What's normally a 25-minute drive took us over an hour. We were worried I was going to miss my flight. Thankfully, it got delayed, and it ended up not being too much of an issue, but then there was like 2 hours of turbulence to start off the flight, so that was not very fun. And then the flight was delayed getting into Dallas, so we almost didn't make it to the appointment for the home viewing, but we did, and we made it. We're here. And these are my oats. So in addition to these, it's just like basically a cup of oatmeal and a scoop of protein powder. I'm gonna have a plum, and that's gonna do it for today. Alright, so it's actually the next morning, but I forgot to give you guys the macros for yesterday, the full day of eating. So the macros were as follows. It came out to 2,113 calories, 195 grams of protein, 252 grams of carbohydrates, and 50 grams of fat. And I've already actually input the macros for what today is going to be, which is a helpful tip. You can put it in ahead of time into your tracker. And today was shockingly similar, 2,114 calories, so literally like a calorie difference, even though the foods were different. 179 grams of protein, 280 grams of carbs, and 57 grams of fat. So slightly different on the macros, but pretty similar overall, and I just thought that that might be interesting to you guys. So there you go. Thank you for joining me for this full day of eating. If you enjoyed and you want to see more of these, please let us know down in the comment section below. If you want to get in contact with us about coaching, anything that you need will be in the description down below. Comment, like, share, all that good stuff, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.